Have I just bought an absolute nail of a car? So no bull, straight into it. Here is my new, very spontaneous purchase off a Facebook Marketplace. An Alfa Romeo Giulietta QV. So this is a very spontaneous purchase off of Facebook Marketplace. As I've said, I'm always scrolling, looking for bargains or opportunity to make something good. And this popped up on Sunday when I was having a look. The seller had said about a known fault. Typical English summer, it has started to rain. So let's get this in the unit, onto the ramp, and then let's talk about what is wrong with this car. So first up is the engine management light. That wasn't on when I bought it, but on the way home, filling it up with fuel and driving back, it's come on. So that definitely needs to be looked at straight away. Don't know if you can hear that, but there's like a chirping noise and it gets worse as you drive it from one of the belts. So that needs to be looked at also. So this was described of having one fault, and that was loss of coolant. Over time, it's leaking coolant, burning coolant, using coolant somehow. Obviously, that could be a number of things, from a hose leak to a seal issue, a head gasket. It literally could be anything. So I've taken a massive gamble on this one. We're just gonna have to see if it pays off. So whilst driving home, like I've said, the engine management light has come on. Also, the oil level warning is on, which I'm hoping is just a low oil amount. However, when I did start it from filling it up with fuel on the way back, it did have a moment where it said low oil pressure, which obviously is really not good. So first protocol, top up the oil. Hopefully that stops the oil light from flickering on the dash. And hopefully there is a fault code logged for low oil pressure if I scan it in a second. Things to note also that I wasn't aware of. It looks like it's got a slow puncture on the front tyres. It's got a few marks, as to be expected of this age. It's now 15 years old and it has done 126,000 miles. This is a 1.75 litre engine, petrol, turbocharged, and it's quoted to have around 235 horsepower from the factory. So it looks like it's got a K&N panel filter in there. Other things I've noticed so far is it's got front and rear wheel spacers on it. And also originally they didn't say Brembo on the calipers, they said Alfa Romeo. So I'd imagine they've had a little bit of a paint touch up and new decals applied to them. The wheels are trashed. This one is actually not too bad, the driver's side front, but the others have definitely had a lot of contact with curbs. We've got front and rear wind deflectors on it, so pimped out. I think that is a standard tint on the back windscreen. However, it has had a wiper delete on the back. And it has got some AliExpress Temu Akropovich exhaust tip pipes, which are definitely not going to be genuine. And that is definitely the standard silencer as well. So they've just cut the ends off and put some tips on her. And this is genuine. I've not looked in the boot yet. My dad did, but let's see if we've got any goodies in here. Yes, we do. De-icer, some spare oil, locking wheel bolts. What is this? A wheel bearing, interesting. And talk of the devil, we've got one here, and here's another one right here now. So if you're new to the channel, you won't know, but in the past, I actually took my dad's one, which is the 170 horsepower 1.4 version, on a track day. At the time, I had a Porsche that was finished, but it was up for sale, and I didn't want to risk crashing it. I used that, and I tell you what, I wasn't the slowest, and the chassis was very, very good. That's kind of what sparked off seeing this one on Facebook Marketplace. One thing to mention, this was off a guy who basically buys and sells cars, has a bit of fun in them. This came in at Part X and had this known issue now. I don't think they wanted to sort of go down the line and fix it. Whether or not they know the genuine issue, it's unsure. That's the risk we take with this. I've done it for the gamble. 4-leaf clovers are meant to be good luck. I definitely am going to need some with this thing. So there are no obvious signs of coolant issues right now in terms of leaking. So it's either burning it or it's dropping it somewhere that I cannot see very easily at this point. By putting a tool onto the expansion tank and pressurizing the coolant system, hopefully we can try and force a little leak somewhere, whether it's hose related, radiator related, or even heater matrix related. So it's holding a steady pressure. So whatever supposed coolant leak or burn so far isn't massive. So if there was an apparent leak from a hose split or something not done up tight, it should have dropped by now. So this is held pressure for a good couple of minutes. So I am going to start it also. So this isn't going to focus too well because the dipstick is quite thin, but the oil level is actually okay. It's up to the maximum mark. So have I been sold a bit of a dummy here? So the oil light is flashing on the dash. It does say it is due a oil change. So is it because of that? But equally, have I been sold a bit of a lie here? I cannot see a coolant leak just yet. But the fact that I had that low oil pressure warning and the oil level is now on the maximum, it's a little bit fishy. I'm going to reset the oil service light. Let's see if that now turns the flashing oil can off of the dash when I turn the ignition on and start it up. So good news, it has turned that flashing oil can off the dash. So that is the service reminder of the oil change done. However, I do know there was that low oil pressure warning. And now that I've started up and let it idle, it does sound quite noisy. In regards to the coolant pressure side now with the vacuum, it's still staying at 15 psi. So it doesn't seem to be anything obvious pressure-wise at this moment. So the three main faults that were logged are positioning diagnosis of camshaft on the exhaust, timing sensor exhaust, and phase synchronization exhaust. Now this has had a cam belt and water pump kit apparently at the start of this year. Has that not been timed up right? Is there an issue with the oil pressure up at the variable valve timing on the exhaust side causing these faults, or are these just old faults? Dad is doing loads of bits on the computer right now with function tests. We've fired both actuators for the inlet and the exhaust. These are the solenoids for the variator cams. And they're both making the same sort of noises, the clicking noises. We've fired up all the fans, the wastegate actuators. We're just going through loads of stuff right now just to see if we can find any other little faults with it. But at the moment, it is just the mystery of, am I using coolant? Have I got oil pressure? So I've carried on doing a little bit more digging off camera. Obviously had the faults for the exhaust variator and little bits and pieces there. I do suspect maybe it wasn't timed up properly when they did the belt, or it isn't still timed up properly, or there is an issue around the variator, the solenoid of the exhaust camshaft. With this engine sounding a little bit more noisy, a little bit more tickier than I anticipated. Yes, the high pressure fuel pump's right there. It just sounds like it is ticky from above on the top. I have just taken the spark plugs out, just have a look at them. They all look pretty similar in terms of coloration on the electrode. With the vacuum pressure in the cooling system not really bringing up any faults right now, I am going to do a compression test next on this engine. So I didn't actually realise, but the gauge I'm using is actually faulty at this point. So all the readings I get from this are very poor. So because of those poor readings, but they were consistently low, there wasn't like one obvious cylinder at that point showing to be at fault. I thought the best thing to do next was to use a chemical which sits in the expansion tank, and it basically tests for a head gasket leak. So that is the sort of head gasket leak test via the chemicals done. So take it with a pinch of salt, but this test is indicating that that isn't an issue with the head gasket. And then I think next step realistically is looking at the timing of this, seeing if I can see if it is out of sync at all. And then at that point, go from there. More so on the diesel engines with Alfa Romeos and some Vauxhalls as well, I think it is. There is a oil seal on the pickup pipe in the sump. That wears over time and then basically allows for not a good seal. So it doesn't create enough oil pressure, particularly on cold starts where the oil is thicker viscosity. It's harder for it to pump it up to the top. I'm thinking the other day when I turned it on after just going down to the petrol station and getting a low oil pressure warning on the dash, I'm wondering if that seal has worn. I've done a quick forum search on the internet. This engine does actually have the same setup, and there are reports of this 1750 QV engine getting the same fault. Now there are a couple of companies that make a adapted piece, so it is like a billet piece with a couple of fancy O-rings on it, which bolts directly onto the oil pickup, which then in the long term rectifies the known fault of the original one seal. I am going to look at ordering that. I think at the moment with my diagnosis, it's oil pressure related on this engine. That is why in my head right now, when I started it, the oil pressure warning light came on, the engine management light came on, was because it didn't have the correct pressure on the exhaust variator side. And then it kind of had a bit of a hissy fit in terms of timing. But like I say, we will go down the route of checking timing physically myself with the timing tool and whatever else I can think of along the way. Still just trying to get my head around what I was told by the seller. Is it true? Is it not true? It's definitely easy to get distracted along the way, thinking, is it this? Is it that? Have they lied to me? So I'm just going to keep going methodically at a time, checking things basically. So whilst I waited for a new compression gauge, because I just wanted to double check those figures again, I thought I might as well do some mental therapy bit for me, which is cleaning. The headlights are pretty damn faded. By doing this, I've done it on other cars before, it really improves the car's appearance and personally adds a good couple £100 to the value of a car instantly. Look how good the results were. For under an hour's worth of work, mint. And then of course I had to do a wash on it. The car was sold to me by a trader, so it wasn't cleaned. It kind of was just take it or leave it. It then allows working on it and being in the unit to be a bit better, which helps save your clothes as well. So the compression test we did the other day had terrible results across all of the cylinders, as you've seen. However, cylinder number 3 is definitely low on pressure, so that indicates there's an issue around that cylinder. I have now decided to do a cylinder leak down test. So with that compression test, that's just seeing how much compression can be made in that cylinder by turning over the engine naturally. Whereas with the cylinder leak down tester, I'm going to apply pressure via the compressor, and then we're going to see how effective it is at holding that pressure. So knowing that cylinder 3 has low compression with that 90 reading, I'm now just going to jump straight ahead, get that at top dead center, apply the gauge to it, apply some pressure in, and then let's see what we hear. Now there can be several outcomes with this. This test is pretty handy. If air is heard from the exhaust out the back, then you have a high chance that there's an issue with the exhaust valves because it's leaking by there. Then if you can hear air escaping from the inlet side, so by the throttle body or the air filter side, then there's a high chance you have an issue valve-wise on the intake valves. And then there's the possibility of a head gasket failure, and that is more likely seen by bubbles in your expansion tank. And then for like worn piston rings and damaged cylinder walls, you can get it normally through like your oil dipstick and stuff where it's breathing back through the crankcases. I'm hoping best outcome is that possibly a valve is slightly bent from maybe a mistimed belt or a snapped belt. But yeah, just trying to puzzle it all together. As I've said before, what is going on with this car? So I have the adapter piece threaded into cylinder 3 straight away. And like I say, I think we're up top dead as best I can with the valves closed. It is important that they are closed, otherwise you will get a false reading. But yeah, as far as I can see from just putting a quarter drive long extension in and just turning the crank, that seems to be the sort of dead spot, sweet spot at the top. And then we have the gauge system, and then the air line is going to connect onto the end of that valve. Okay, so slightly less of a leak, around 45%, and I can hear a leak. Oh, interesting. No way. I'm gonna grab the camera down, I found something. Gauge calibrated, set at 0. Get ready to pop this in a sec. But take a look at the expansion tank in a second when I connect this up. I'll set the camera down so it's steady, hopefully it'll be in focus, and you should see something. So I think that is going to end today's video right there for my lovely little cloverleaf Giulietta. Pretty confident with that diagnosis now with the head gasket failure. I mean, there could be an issue with the coolant jacket, the wall. I highly doubt it, and I bloody hope not. So in the next episode, we will be attacking that cylinder head, getting it off the car, having a good look round at the valves as well anyway, and obviously, hopefully there's a telltale sign on the gasket face itself of a failure. If not, further diagnosis. And also, as long as that all goes smoothly, I am going to attack from the bottom end as well and do the sump pickup pipe O-ring with the new modified flange that is due to come in a couple of days. Thank you ever so much for watching this. An absolute gamble on this Facebook Marketplace purchase. I am hoping all this work pays off and this becomes a lovely little car. Because if it isn't, well, as always, stay safe and I'll catch you in the next one. Bloody Italian cars. Stick to the Germans.